It is spooky season, and that means it is probably the perfect time to be running those D&D one-shot campaigns for horror for this upcoming Halloween. And we all know that it is kind of no secret that D&D is hard, I think, to run horror in. There is, of course, like the Curse of Strahd, and then there's also, if you any Dimension 20 watchers, there's Never After. But even with Never After, I felt that it was scary in the beginning, yes, but it didn't really get that scary towards the end. And I think, there's a narrative reason for that within just like the genre of horror in general that we're going to dive into before I go into like some tips and tricks that I've used to help create a horror campaign that had my players playing on the floor because they were so scared and tense that they couldn't sit in their chair and play the campaign. First things first, let's go over like general horror structure. So there's like 3 different types of horror, which is despair, terror, and horror. Now, you might be saying, Brandon, those are all kind of synonyms to each other, and I would agree with you, but there is slight important differences. Despair is the beginning. It's setting that mood that this is, like that noir mood, that this is a spot where the players don't know what they're being thrown into, the characters are new to an environment, and you're kind of just starting to introduce the monster. Terror is the psychological, so psychological horror resides a lot in this terror section where the beast is still unknown or the monster is still unknown. The characters and even to the audience, there are things that the audience is unsure of what's going on in the background around the characters. They just have no idea how to combat the situation they currently find themselves in. And then horror itself is when Michael Myers kills someone by putting them on something. So the actual act and whatever gore, viscera, body horror that comes with that violent act of one of the characters dying or whatever from the monster, and we get to see the monster on screen, that's horror. And so why is it important to distinguish that? I think it's because the fear of the unknown is so much more powerful than the fear of something being scary. Like psychological horrors, I think that psychological horrors are way scarier than just usual cheap jump scare from a different movie, right? So we want to keep your players in this terror radius for as long as possible. But so how do you do that in D&D, and why is it hard for D&D to do this? Well, even with the Never After campaign, without getting into spoilers, Never After, the issue is with Never After is that there's no disempowerment. Brandon Lee Mulligan, fantastic DM. I hope to one day DM as good as he does. Brandon Lee Mulligan still uses classes and abilities from D&D 5e, because of course he does. It's a D&D 5e campaign. The issue is the level of disempowerment. The player is still able to shoot Eldritch Blasts, do all these magical abilities, and so they still feel capable, even though there was stuff and objects thrown at them during the campaign, and Brennan put rules into the campaign with levels of dealing with levels of exhaustion and stuff. That was really cool. It never really got to a point where it was really terrible. The stepmother in episode 4 or something was really terrifying. But it's because, and especially in the later episodes, the fear of the unknown's gone. There's no more unknown. They know what they're dealing with. They know how things operate. And so that is what we're going to try and avoid in this, and to instill that level of disempowerment, and to make sure that we are not revealing stuff sooner than we can. So I constructed this campaign in a very similar fashion, where I focused heavily on the psychological horror elements in session 1, while these beasts and monsters were still kind of very much unknown. And it really, all this kind of deals with the type of lore and stuff and flavoring that you're doing with your story. Mine was a COD zombies, there's different killers that are out and about, kind of Dead by Daylight, but with kind of a Samantha COD zombies ghost person controlling them. So there's a mystic spiritual thing along with that. I think a big thing to note was that for me, I kept over session 1 was very psychological horror. And then at the end of session 1, I had the first killer encounter and basically just one-shot somebody because you have to. But they all survived the first encounter, which was quite impressive. In the later sessions, so how do we keep it in that terror radius, right, of the unknown? For me, it was just the fact that there was 4 killers, not 1, but 4. And I put lore pieces out there to kind of for them to piece together how the heck they're supposed to escape this situation, because there was mystical stuff happening and they had to figure that out way. I say mystical, it was more like sci-fi 80s, Stranger Things-esque, where like they had to piece together what exactly happened about this lab that's nearby, about the history of the location that they're in, and so that kind of had a lot to do with it. So these, so the suspense, I suppose, was like the different killers. Once they found out the 4 different killers, I dropped the horror aspect. You might say, Brandon, what the heck? I thought they were running a horror campaign. And yes, but change the type of fear. With a horror movie, you're kind of dealing with like that terror thing, right? Mine was, I wanted to make every encounter intense and every session intense, to the point where there were players like playing on the floor. And there's that fear for that you don't know, like you could be at 100 health and get chomped down to like nothing in one turn. Just like that fact alone, which doesn't sound fair because it isn't. It's not supposed to be. It's horror. It's supposed to be disempowered. Granted, I did balance it out to where these killers would have to hit them a couple times for that to happen, approximately about 3, unless they got super lucky. That is kind of how that worked. And with the leveling system, I had it to where they leveled up after each killer encounter. So the people who were brave enough to take that risk to face these like monstrosities got to level up after, got to access more abilities. The people who didn't like encounter the killers so much, were hiding around, would not level up as fast. So like the next time they ran into a killer, they would be weaker. I homebrewed some classes. For reference, I made this campaign somewhat akin to Dead by Daylight in a lot of ways. The players had to fix generators. After they fixed the generators, there's like this whole lore thing of them having to also get to like a teleporter, a la COD Zombies style, to escape this these monsters that were chasing them. It was very Friday the 13th ish, mixed in with COD Zombies, mixed in with Dead by Daylight, through a whole even like a map. But with this, I'm just gonna quickly go over the classes. So the classes are all about disempowerment. It's gonna be a low level campaign starting at level 1. And they get up to level 5 by the end of the campaign. These classes are all based off the different like 80s horror tropes that you see a lot. And I'll put, and you can go ahead and copy off of the screen here, like, you know, what the classes are. So level 1, a lot of stuff from Barbarian here with the Reckless Attack, as well as something's off with the Inquisitive Rogues, like when you make a Wisdom Insight check, choose a roll of 7 or lower on the D20 as an 8. Level 2, learn on the fly. Your street smarts allows you to the ability to improvise and adapt. When you make an ability check, you can roll a D6 and add that to the ability check. You may use this ability a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier per short rest. So this is a very Wisdom-based class. And level 4 and level 5, more Barbarian. And level 5 actually gives you, I think, a Paladin ability, which gives you to kind of have that built-in character arc with it, where you play like this kind of like selfish rogue, who then, you know, cares more about his allies in the end. Following that is the Geek, which even has even lower hit dice. The Geek, his whole thing is fixing these generators. They're gonna be the one fixing the generators, while the Rebel can kind of flex and change positions when they need to. The Goofball and the Prep, if you see here on the left, like the full screen actually, the Goofball and the Prep are more support, and of course the Jock is going to be frontlining. So with this, Gifted and Talented, choose 2 of your skill proficiencies or one of your skill proficiencies, and you're proficient with toolkits. Your proficiency bonus is added doubled for any ability check you make that uses. So very rogue. This class is very roguish. Scary Cat, you aren't great with confrontation. You can use your bonus action, take the dash, disengage, or hide action. So as you can see, like, I didn't like homebrew crazy with these classes. Granted, it did take some time to I'm losing my voice like that. It did take some time to like pull these together, but for the most part, it's just stuff, and I changed a lot during the campaign. So, part-time tutor, tinkerer, like this whole class is very much based off fixing these generators, and level 5 inventor, I base it kind of off sorcery points. Sort of, we get 5 ingenuity points, and they can craft stuff with more like so. The big thing also that I did was make everything very consumable, and so it was very much a war of attrition and choosing your battles against these like killers, because like very much akin to Michael Myers and stuff, you can't really fight back. You can't kill them. It's hard to kill them. So they weren't able to, like, it was very much like hit and runs, distractions, hiding away. That was how they would have to deal with these NPCs, which I will show later. And so you have the goofball class, which I'll show as well briefly, so you can like pause the video and go ahead and copy some of these abilities for yourself. The goofball is very much, I believe, bardish. I think silvery barbs is just like a part of the class somewhere. I don't think it's in this class though. Yeah, and then you have the prep. So the prep is also charisma based. So the rogue, not the rogue. The rebel is wisdom based. The nerd is dex and intelligence based. The goofball and the prep are going to be more charisma based, and the jock is, of course, going to be constitution and strength. Here we go with the prep. Whatever, you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. A lot of the NPCs have like the dragon thing where it's like a DC 14 wisdom save, and they have to make that, otherwise they're frozen, like they're frightened. They're not frozen, they're frightened. It's also currency and was kind of a weak ability, so feel free to change this one if you want. Make a charisma, intimidation, deception, or persuasion check. You can roll an additional d6 and add the results to the ability check. You can do this a number of times equal to proficiency bonus and regain all uses of this feature when you finish a short rest. I think that I ended up changing this actually to Yammer. So I just had both classes have Yammer because this ability was quite weak in the grand scheme of it, because there wasn't much deceiving or intimidating or persuading these like monsters that were chasing them. There were NPCs that they could have talked to persuade and stuff, but there are other people with crazy roll, not even high charisma, just crazy rolls, and they're able to pull it off. Of course, you can keep it in if there are more NPCs in the campaign that you're running that are able to use these functions with. Just if you're running against like a Jason, you're not able to do much persuasion or intimidating against the Jason, so just be aware of that. Yeah, so your kind of cool, I guess, is the silvery barbs. So there you go. And then lastly, we have the jock. The jock I base very much off of fighter. You get to choose a fighting style or varsity athletes, so swimming, track, wrestling, soccer, football, cheerleading, boxing, basketball, baseball. Some of these are going to be more useful than others. But of course, there are going to be players that are going to do this based off of role play more so than like actual like optimization. So that allows for both parties to do so. Fighting spirit, I believe, is just indomitable, or something akin to that. Competitive edge is action surge. Halftime is oh my god, second win. And best defense is you get a second attack because the best defense is an offense. So those are like the 5 classes, and they're all about kind of buying into these horror tropes and having fun with these horror tropes, as well as getting like, so you get like these breakfast club group of people running away from like a Michael Myers or a Jason or something. So that was like very, very fun. I think it's a cool idea, and it helps disempower these players against these creatures that are just way above their level. Which, speaking of, we're going to talk about those next. These are the killers I came up with. This is basically the hunters from Dead by Daylight. You can ignore the description. For class 18, just to briefly go through this. High hit points, 35 movement speed, so that the people cannot outrun them, much like a lot of like killer chase video games. Some their saving throws, skills, resistances, adaptive predator points. You might be asking me, what the heck is this? It's empty now, but before I had it so where I mentioned that the players would level up after a killer encounter, but the killers would also level up. So they're this 44 slashing damage. Didn't used to be 44 slashing damage. It used to be like, so they would start off with 1. After 1 encounter, they start off with 2. After 1 encounter, they stick 3, 4, up to 5. Up to 4, actually, pardon. So like this would be like AP D4. AP D6. Where I would cap it, like, you know, you feel it out, you cap it off at a number. I think I capped it off at 2d6 because it was just doing so much damage. But like, just try and scale it to where like, maybe don't even have it. I think a good recommendation to improve on this even is just like, don't even have health. Really just make it to where you have like, you get hit 3 times, you're down. That could even be easier than what I had set up. But yeah, so legendary actions. This one's very much a sharpshooter. Throws hatchets just like the hunters in Dead by Daylight. So that's what this one was based off of. This one's based off the Headless Horseman. So, Tribal Presence, summon him out. They can summon a steed. I'll summon the stat block a little bit longer so you can pause the video. Copy that down if you want to. Summon Scythe for necrotic damage. Shadow Step was the fun one. Kind of just got it from the monk class. This guy was meant to be kind of like the bruiser. He'd run around with his claws, breaking into buildings. Very ghost face, like just slam into everything. Very clumsy, so it was like super fun. And then you have his horse, which I just pulled. I think it was just, I forgot what mob specifically I pulled it from, but yeah, cool. This one's based off Songbird from Bioshock Infinite. More stuff. I'll just let you guys kind of like pause, take this in. This one was basically like a giant bird, like a giant crow, but with like a Venetian bone mask and then like deer antlers coming from it. So that was kind of the appearance that this thing took, hence why you have like gore is here. I even made his homemade Screech audio as well, where I combined Screech from Five Nights at Freddy's along with like Lois saying Peter. I had a little bit of a violin screech, a little bit of reverb, sounded awesome. Lastly, this was a siren that, like, when it got to shore, it would split its tail and walk on two legs. This one's very close to the nurse for those who play D&D, or D&D, DBD. Definitely, like, slower movement speed compared to the others. This one would fly a lot, of course. This one has a horse. This one, not so fast, but it does have a Misty Step. So this one would teleport around. This one's also unique in that it had Siren Song, which is a DC 17 Charisma saving throw. And if they fail, they can only spend their turns moving toward her. And her whole goal was to use this Kiss of the Sea thing, which basically like grapples them, applies this Hunter's Mark on them, and then she would hunt the people with Hunter's Mark to get that D6 extra psychic damage. And then she had a trident that allowed her to shoot 3 Eldritch Blasts. The type of Eldritch Blasts that would like pull people towards her. That's kind of her play style, and she would just jump around and teleport. Same thing with the Adapt Predator points again. The damage is probably the hardest thing to balance because the players got to level up and increase their hit points. But you have to make sure that, like I said, I try to balance it to where the killers would do about 3 hits, you're done, you're down. Because I changed the down rules as well. So, after a player's hit points have been reduced to 0, they gain benefits for each successful death saving throw. First success, they faintly regain consciousness and are able to crawl up to half their movement per turn. An attack roll against the creature has advantage, so it's still the same thing as if they're prone. Second success, the player gains the ability to use the hide action on their turn. The dexterity stealth roll is made at disadvantage, so they're able to like crawl and hide, much like Dead by Daylight. And the third success is the player gains the ability to use any healing items they have on person on their turn. If a player heals themselves on the turn, they are not given a bonus action until their next turn. However, they may use their movement. So I basically just had it to where like you are able to like crawl away while a killer's after somebody else. And a lot of their healing, there was no, from what you saw from the classes, there was no healing word or nothing. Everything was resource based. So there were med kits around the map, bandages, stuff that they can use. Like I said, very video game based. Speaking of video game based, let's talk about now the generators. So once again, generators based off Dead by Daylight. So they all start off with the score of 0, and they must make a DC 12 sleight of hand check in order to repair it. On success, the generator health is increased by 5 plus whatever they rolled. On a failure, the generator health is decreased by 5 plus 12, the DC minus whatever they rolled. And a killer rolls a perception check with the player's roll as the DC to see if they are alerted by the noise. Once the generator reaches a score of 100, it is powered on and bathes the surrounding area in bright light. Only 4 players at a time may work on a generator. The players must succeed a DC 12 perception check within 60 feet of a generator to notice it. Cool. These are some homebrew Perca-Colas. I did put Perca-Colas around the map. I had the Perca-Colas next to the generators, so they power on the generators. Boom, they can get the sodas. And they had dimes around the map, so they put dimes in the machines. This one was basically just the shield spell. Double time cola. You can use the attack, dash, disengage, or hide action as a bonus action. So basically, you get a free rogue thing for a turn. Catechase Blue. This one was you feel relief as this lightning blueberry soda hits your tongue. You gain 2d4 plus HP, 1d4 plus 2 temp HP. So very nice. And Solar Squeeze, I think, is just you gain haste for a turn. No, you just take the next ability check or attack roll with advantage. Yeah, okay, haste would be way too OP. But yeah, so those are the colas if you want to use them. Don't have to. Just wanted to make it kind of like COD Zombies. I even had kind of like a pack-a-punch thing to where like they were able to actually fight the killers off in the last session. But yeah, those are basically... That's basically it. I would say that the 4 NPCs that I showed are enough to kind of like have an idea for like different play styles and for different like, you know, each encounter is kind of different, especially based off environment and such. So anyways, I hope that that helps and that you were able to pull some stuff from inspiration from this to help you with your D&D one-shots, and hope you all have a happy Halloween.